Hi guys, it's Arsh Ellahi, and in today's session we're going to be looking at, is buy-to-let in 2021 really worth it, or are there better ways of actually making some income from property? And what I'm going to be doing is giving you a bit of a breakdown. So before we do any of that, I want to say a quick hello to all subscribers, all listeners, all watchers. Whether you're completely new to the channel or whether you're returning, I want to say a quick hello. If you haven't already done so, please press the subscribe button and press that notification bell so that every time I release a new video, you get notified of it. I try and release approximately one video a week. And if you're finding it of real use, please share and like it with your friends and like-minded individuals, and hopefully let's get me up that YouTube rank. So let's get straight into it. Is buy-to-let worth it? So when we talk about buy-to-let, we're looking at it from lots of different points of view. So when someone normally refers to something as buy-to-let, we're looking at what I would consider a single dwelling, so something like a one-bedroom flat, two-bedroom mid-terrace house, three-bedroom semi-detached house, where you're letting it out to a single unit or a family unit, shall we say. So literally, so it's not a HMO, it's running it as one unit. And over the last couple of years, landlords, investors have come under some scrutiny where we've had additional pressure such as Section 24. We'll be talking about Section 24 and all the pressures that's putting on the demands of a landlord. We're going to be talking about increased legislation and what that's doing. We're going to be talking about all the new bits of legislation that's going to be coming in, part of it being about the electrical certificates that's required. So all these things cost money. As a result of them costing money, it's now going to have a negative effect on our cash flow, and what can we do to kind of bring that forward and how can we enhance it? So more importantly, ask ourselves a question: is investing in buy-to-lets in 2021 really a viable strategy, or should we be looking at other methods to generate cash flow from property? So let's look at, I'm going to try and give you some pros and cons. So let's have a look at what's happened over the last 24 months, or especially over the last 12 months. Now, I've talked a lot about COVID-19. I've talked a lot about what it's doing to the property industry. But more importantly, today I want to concentrate on what COVID-19 has done on the rental market and the property market specifically. So, good news first, as a result of COVID, rental demand is through the roof. And when I say that is because every time we list a property up for rent or something becomes available, previously it may have taken 2 to 3 weeks to fill. We're now finding that it fills itself within the space of a week, and we get more applicants per property. So previously we may have had 5 people per property. Now we're looking at circa 10 to 15 people per property. And what this is allowing us to do is actually create almost like a job application process. So we look at them and we say, okay, we've got all these people sat in front of us. This person works, this person doesn't, this person's a student, this person is on X, Y, and Z. We can have a look at what their lifestyle is. We can have a look at the reasons for the moving. We can have a look at their references. We can have a look at their credit. And we are now in charge as to who can we put in the property. Previously, if we had only a few applicants, and some landlords have been in a position where they've literally just been trying to fill the property to get the income generated. I know lots of landlords that struggle when a property becomes vacant because they're worried about the outgoing, they're worried about the mortgage being paid, and they don't want to be in a position where the property is costing them money that month. So they will potentially take the first person that comes through the door. And this is almost like becoming a motivated seller. You're becoming a motivated landlord, and generally speaking, because you're taking the first person that comes through the door, you're not doing the correct checks, you're not doing the correct reference checks, and etc. And as a result of that, this could cost you in the long term. I've talked loads of times about when things have gone wrong. I've done a video, hopefully it will show up here, of a video where a tenant has cost me tens of thousands of pounds because I didn't do the correct checks and they created a cannabis farm. Last week I did a video of the HMO going on fire, and as a result of one bad tenant having bad guests around. And these scenarios which can cost you a load of money, and if you have too many of those, these can actually cost you your money and also your livelihood. So tenant demand, rental demand is on the increase. Now, the one thing that we do also have to take into consideration, we'll talk about the good, but we're also going to talk about the bad. There are mass redundancies. There are still people, a load of people on furlough, which means that a lot of people are potentially struggling to pay their rent and also their outgoings. And more importantly, rental arrears at an all-time high. And these guys are all being protected by the fact that the government says that we as landlords and property investors cannot evict tenants. So it feels like that we're being kicked pretty much at every stage, and this is why in this video I'm talking about, is it still viable to buy to let, but bear in mind that mass reductions, furlough, rental arrears, that can happen not only in single lets like in flats, 2-bedroom houses, 3-bedroom houses. This can happen in HMOs. This can happen in other strategies as well. But it's about creating the right tenancy, about understanding the tenant, understanding how they can afford it, and doing those initial checks from the outset. So one of the key things that I'm going to be talking about in this video is the checks that you should be doing on your tenants to make sure that they are paying in order for you to generate cash flow. Another part of whether buy-to-lets are still a viable strategy is the introduction of Section 24. So if you don't already know what Section 24 is, one thing I would suggest is that you probably Google it and you watch some of the YouTube videos. So I've done some of the YouTube videos on Section 24. And Section 24 was introduced by the government where they said that you can no longer claim your mortgage interest relief is as part of your costs and as part of your outgoings, and therefore now they're going to start to tax you on the full rental income that you receive. So previously, if your rent was £500, your mortgage was approximately £200, you could offset that against some of your costs. Now what they're saying is that the full £500 is taxable, which means that it's going to start to push people into higher tax brackets. Now, when you start to look at things like this, and it's going to start to push into a higher tax bracket, there are ways around it, and you can watch lots of videos about incorporating your property portfolio into a limited company structure. One thing I will say, and this is my little mini caveat or get out of jail card, is that this is not financial advice. I suggest that you go off and get independent financial advice before you decide to do something like this. If you've only got a handful of properties, it may not affect you. And what I've kind of seen from research is that you do need approximately circa 6 properties for this to become viable for you to move from a from an individual structure to more so a limited company structure, because there are other things that you have to take into consideration, like if you don't move them over in the correct method, you can get hit with capital gains taxes. There's also some legal costs, there's also some refinance costs, because you're moving the lending away from individually to also then a limited structure, which means that your lenders may ask you to either refinance, go to another lender, which means that you're going to be getting other valuation costs and other costs surrounding it. So that's something that you definitely need to take into consideration. It's not something that we can just comment on within a minute on a YouTube video. You need to speak to mortgage brokers, you need to speak to tax advisors, you need to speak to accountants and solicitors to make sure that you're putting it in a tax efficient structure, and more importantly, understanding that this is definitely the right method for you and your personal circumstances. So I will say that you don't just go and throw yourself into a limited company structure without understanding everything that goes around it. So moving on, one of the things that has also affected understanding whether buy-to-let is still a viable strategy is the increase of new legislation. So 2021, where we've had lots of bits that have been thrown in. So more and more councils up and down the country are adopting more selective licensing methods. So they're now saying that they want you to do this, they want you to do that. More councils are becoming Article 4 locations, which means that now if you want to turn a single let into a multi-let, you then have to go through planning. And what they're doing is putting in almost like mini hurdles in place, so that if you want to be renting your property out, or if you want to be converting that property into HMO, you've got to jump through these hurdles. And as a result of jumping through these hurdles, naturally, there is a cost attached to it. Now, when you start to look at things like rent, or your rental income, once you start to take out your other costings like your management costs have increased as a result of the new laws that have come in, where they took away the admin fees and some of the other costs where agents used to be able to claim and make some income from. Agents have started to increase their management costs, and guess who that has affected? That has affected landlords like me and you, which means that previously we were probably charging, some agents were probably charging circa 10% plus VAT. Now it's gone up to 12% plus VAT to incorporate some of the losses that they've generated from other parts of their business. Now, has that had an effect on perhaps the tenant, the end user? The chances are that the rents have gone up. So as a result of that, ultimately, it's the end user that is being affected as a result of all the new legislation that's been brought in. So as a landlord, you have a responsibility to provide EPC. You've had a responsibility to provide gas safety certificates. There's now new legislation to say that you're going to have to start providing electrical certification. And if you're running a HMO, you've got your fire alarm, you've got your emergency lighting, and all the other things that go with it. Then you've got your HMO license, you've got your selective licensing. It's not cheap being a property investor. It's not cheap being a landlord, because these are all costs that you have to come out. And once you start to take into consideration the Section 24 and that you can't start to claim back some of these in your costings and within your account, it's going to start pushing people into a negative, not a negative cash flow, which kind of defeats the objective of becoming a property investor. So you've got to kind of ask yourself, why did you get involved in property in the first place? Is it because you wanted to create a nest egg, or you wanted to do this as a part-time thing to go along with your full-time occupation? Is it because you wanted to make property passive income? Is it because you wanted it to generate some cash flow? Is it that you wanted it for the capital appreciation? There's lots of reasons why people get involved in property. So you've got to understand what it was that first you got involved in property, because then you can start to answer a load of your own questions. If it is cash flow, now naturally single lets are very limited to what they can produce in terms of cash flow. Now if you're looking for the more aggressive methods, you may start to look at other strategies like HMOs, like service accommodation, etc, etc. Now, there are lots of other strategies out there. So if you're finding that you're not generating the cash flow that you wanted from running it as an investment, you can start to look at other avenues, such as, can I purchase a property? Have you ever come across a strategy, the BRRR, which is the buy, refurbish, rent and refinance, and you get all your money back out? So there are lots of ways that you can create an infinitive return. Again, if you're purchasing new properties, one thing I would suggest, and again, get financial and legal advice on it, is to now start to purchase them in your limited company structure as opposed to your personal name. And one thing I will say is that when this first came about, everyone started to jump straight into the limited company structure. And I'm sitting here as a skeptic right now. HMRC aren't stupid. They can see exactly what's going to happen. And they've seen that people have jumped from one way to another into a limited company structure. It's only a matter of time. And again, this is my personal opinion, that HMRC will say, okay, I understand that landlords were previously doing this. We wanted them to become higher tax rate payers. Now, as a result of that, they've jumped through a loophole to then go into a limited company structure. Chances are, guess what? They're going to put something in place to hit limited companies as well. So that's why I've said that if you are looking at creating that limited company structure, that you've got to make sure that you understand the costings, you've got to make sure that you understand the implications of doing so, and make sure that it's the right structure for you. And the only people that can advise you on that really is your tax advisors, your accountants and your solicitors, who look after your professional side of the business. So there we have it, guys. I appreciate it's a bit of doom and gloom, but you've got to look at this without, you've got to look at it from a logical point of view. You've got to make sure that you understand exactly what's going on. I personally think that buy-to-lets still are a viable strategy. They're not going to set the world on fire. Unfortunately, you will require quite a few properties to make it what I would consider a decent sized business, or especially if you're looking at it from an income point of view, they are quite an easy portfolio. If you've got a portfolio of single lets, it can be quite hassle-free, can be quite relaxed. This again depends on the tenants that you've got in your properties. It depends on the management and the power team that you've got in play. But providing that you've got the right property in the right location, the right people looking after it, there's no reason why you shouldn't live a hassle-free landlord. As there's a term that lots of people use, it's a let and forget. Now with HMOs, there are lots of other implications that come along it. You're looking after quite a few more tenants within the same property, and that comes with its issues. So I'm not saying that HMOs are a bad strategy. I just said that it is a little bit more management and time intensive. Buy-to-lets are quite easy, but bear in mind that they are limited in the amount of income that they can generate. So there are pros and cons, and you've got to decide what is it that you're after from your property journey. So that might be a bit of a homework for you. Understand what is it that you want from your property portfolio, and then you can decide what strategy kind of works best for you. So guys, as always, please like and subscribe to the channel. If you haven't already done so, please share it with your friends and family. Like I said, it will get me up the YouTube rankings, and more importantly, I really hope that you've enjoyed the session. Other information. So every Tuesday at 6 a.m. I release a podcast. It's called The Property Rebel. So you can find it on Google Podcasts, you can find it on Apple Podcasts, as well as Spotify, Stitcher, just to name a few of the other platforms. So if you like more free education, please go and listen to the Property Rebel podcast. If you want to connect with me on social media, you can do so by finding me under the handles of Arsh Ellahi. You can find me on Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter, and Clubhouse. And then finally, if you haven't already done so, go and download the Property Investor app. It's the UK's first property investment platform, which showcases all kinds of deals all over the country. So whether you're looking for below market value deals, rent-to-rent deals, lease option deals, BRRR strategies, which we've talked about briefly in this video, but more importantly, as I said, if you're starting out and you're looking for your next property, that could be the platform that finds it for you. So if you haven't already done so, go to propertyinvestораpp.co.uk, or if you've got a smartphone, you can go to the App Store, type in Property Investor, and you'll be able to download the app within the space of 2 minutes, get yourself registered, and you'll see over 200 properties right in the palm of your hand. Guys, on that note, I wish you all, as always, to be safe, well, and happy, and I look forward to speaking to you all very soon. Thank you, and bye-bye.